Georgia's defense gave up 0 points against Samford. Not really unexpected. The Dogs outmanned the Samford Bulldogs. However, it was fun to see some of the younger Georgia Bulldogs get in there and have some responsibility, some more action. So that's what we're focusing on this episode of Film Don't Lie. That's Brent Rollins. I'm Dayne Young. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel or like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter if that's your jam, wherever that you consume our Film Don't Lie content. And Brent, you were texting me during the game and you said, we have to do some stuff on Mykel Williams. And then you saw Bear Alexander come in and said, we have to do some stuff on Bear. So here we are.
I was very impressed by the Bear. And I think Bear was the second highest graded player for the game, according to PFF. So, like you said, young guys, and that's what this game's all about. But what's interesting when you think about it, last season, top 15, top 10-ish matchup to start the season, and then a UAB in the second game, which is much better sort of competition than Samford. But two games that one is a tight game and then two, a game you should win. Both like this year, last year, 3 points given up by the defense in the first two games. I'm not counting the pick six against UAB. So, that's 3 points, less than 500 yards, first two games of both seasons. That's kind of a whole new world, not a whole new world, but a different level of defensive play. Let's
see it in motion. I'm going to hit play. Tell me what you see.
This is one where Mykel Williams, this is the sack. And then Dan Jackson does what Dan Jackson.
Oh, dirty Dan
does.
He did it again.
And makes plays. But I think one thing that's encouraging, with Williams, it was clear from all the commentary coming out of camp. I mean, I watched some of the stuff in the spring personally. Like he's an absolute player, and he started the first two games. Now, here is this guy's trying to get out in the screen, and he doesn't do the greatest of jobs. And their offensive line is in no way near as talented as anything that Georgia will see the rest of the season. But with all that being, and he missed the sack, like he didn't sort of finish the sack. All that being said, you watch him play. He has a plan. Like he has a plan of attack for rushing when he is rushing. And you see him, especially on 3rd and 9. This was 3rd and 9. When it's third down, much like they did with Trayvon Walker, they bring him to the interior. And, I think some of the things that you've seen him had to do in this game and then the first two games, from a skill set standpoint, they look at it like, hey, this guy can potentially do these things that we asked Trayvon Walker, who was picked first overall and just had a phenomenal debut as a Jacksonville Jaguar. Like this guy has that kind of potential. And that's, not rushing down the middle, like all sorts of little details from a pass rush perspective that he's a little evolved. His evolution is a little higher than most true freshmen.
And I think you pointed this out in a text that we had in the Oregon game, just where they positioned him on the defensive line. I think it's an interesting combo to have Mykel here and then obviously Mr. Jalen Carter here.
Yep.
That can be an interesting, what stunts can we pull with this? Can we manhandle the middle? Do you want us to work from the edges? There's a lot of options there, especially when you add in Nolan Smith, Robert Beal.
Yeah, and then actually even at the top of the screen, you got Xavier Sorey, who is coming in on these, sort of third and true long situations just to bring more speed onto the field. And he actually, for the most part, wins until the QB does his thing. And, him wearing 18, he kind of long and length that he has looks very much, it comes in the game like a guy who used to wear number 19 for Georgia.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of young guys getting some PT and doing some good things.
I should point out that Samford knew it had to get rid of the football very quickly. So people if they talk about sacks or all that stuff, look, Samford had a game plan for what they needed to do, and they executed it, I thought, pretty darn well. They didn't score any points. I get that. But, they knew that they couldn't stand there in the pocket because you just can't withstand Georgia's athleticism and strength.
Nope, correct. And I'm thinking their average depth of target for the game was like 3.5 yards down the field. The ball was out 2.6 seconds on average for the game. So it was catch it, get rid of it.
Here's a 3rd and 3.
Speaking of making plays, That's what this guy keeps doing.
2.
Number 2.
Smile. You're on candid camera. That is a reference that really predates me, but whatever.
Yes. And when we look at one of the measures that we have on PFF is called a stop. And what a stop is where you make a solo tackle that results in a loss for the offense and not necessarily loss of yardage. For example, even if he gained a yard here, not getting the first down, even though he gained a yard or 2, is a loss for the offense here. That's a solo tackle doing that. Ingram Dawkins there as well, who hasn't really played as much as I thought he would through 2 games. Only 26 snaps through 2 games for Ingram Dawkins. But you can tell that Munden is just a sort of crazy good athlete, and they're just letting him play. He's played more snaps than any non-secondary player. Like, he's the guy that's been on the field the most in the first 2 games.
Now I'm just drawing on the screen. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. And this is going to be my universal signal for Smile Munden.
Yes. Smiley face.
Cool.
I like it.
As you give me new toys with this new software that we're rocking with, and I'm going to play with it.
Hey, might as well. That's what we're here for, right? Draw and have fun. You know, we're like Bob Ross of football. Put a tree here or put a tree there.
Don't let me be like a weather forecaster and draw some things I shouldn't draw. All right, here we go. Second.
Making plays in space. And this is one where a couple things. One, the play, if you watch with the way the TV did the stuff, if you watch the play in full, Williams is doing a great job of communicating. So he's changing his alignment based upon how Samford changes their alignment. He does a good job of communicating, knows exactly what he has to do in terms of coverage and making the play based upon that. Doesn't hesitate. Doesn't necessarily get there. But the biggest thing for me is
and it's because of a chip though. This is what
little rub.
That's a good little rub there. If this is a straight path, I think he gets there.
Oh yeah.
I think he stops it. But again, you have to find the path of least resistance. And if he can find a way to sneak through this way, he has enough speed, he can make that stop.
It's much like, and the things with defensive players oftentimes, it's much like the GOAT conversation. Like if you want to talk like Jordan versus LeBron or something like that, if the fact that you can have the conversation with that person being, you're not going to have a GOAT conversation with Jordan and Tracy McGrady. Like that's just not going to happen, right? The fact that they're asking him to do these things tells you what they as a coaching staff look at the kid's ability and says, hey, we don't mind dropping him into coverage. We don't mind making him play to the wide side of the field in space against the back out there. That's fine with us. So those are things to me from a coaching perspective where you're like, okay, maybe my defense dictates that this player has to do that, but we've actually asked this true freshman who's also, 260 pounds to do these things. That, to me, the fact that you can have that conversation that he's being asked to do those things is evidence for how talented the kid is.
Quick thing I wanted to point out, just the coaching around Robert Beal. You see that this play is flowing this way. Everything about the quarterback says we're going to throw this to the flat, and Beal doesn't keep going upfield because that's just going to be useless. He's going to be wasted in space down here, wasted effort. And he backs up and begins to flow in this direction. Does he make the play? No, but this is the kind of stuff that well-coached teams do.
Yep, and he's the sort of seeming spy guy, and he goes and takes a solid angle.
Next up.
97. My boy Warren. Mr. Brenson has actually had a good couple first games. In terms of snap count, not as much, like he's 26 snaps. But when he's been asked to rush the passer, and if you look at just pass rush grade, the PFF pass rush grade through the first 2 games, it's Jalen Carter at the top, shocker. Bear Alexander.
This is my surprise face.
Bear Alexander second, and third is Mr. Brenson. And it's not like he's gotten pressure. He's got 1 pressure in 2 games. This was it. But he's winning. He's winning his reps. The ball's out before he's able to actually have a pressure. But his win rate over the first couple games actually one of the better on the team. And to me, those are flashes that you want to see because you want to find some interior impact guys a la Devontae White in the past, because Jordan Davis was never much of a pass rusher, occasional play. But you need to find playmakers other than Jalen Carter.
And, I mean, frankly, there's just a lot of guys that have rotated in there beyond the Wyatts and the Davises. I mean, in past years, Julian Rochester has had snaps that are meaningful. Georgia's replacing a lot of guys in the last 2 years.
Yep, very much so. But him doing work. Hustle.
Next up, 90. I love this one.
This is Mr. Walthour.
Walthour.
Coach is always impressed that I know him because he's got the dreads. But
what time is it? Walthour. I'm going to make that a thing.
There you go. But that's effort. It's an effort play.
This is what really separates, I think, Georgia's front seven defenders, because how many teams have a guy that is, I wouldn't say that he's an edge or anything. He's a defensive lineman. He could line up at D tackle. He'd be fine with that. How many guys go out and make this play in the flat? And Georgia does it pretty darn regularly.
Well, I think you may have either shared this on the event or tweeted it, one or the other, but the video, the kid from Tech, the center from Tech, just kind of getting out there and getting a serious couple loafs. That's not a loaf. That guy is working his tail off to get to the football. Everybody's being physical at the point of attack.
I mean, when you have Walthour and Dirty Dan meeting up together with somebody, that's two guys doing their job.
And I will say, just from a watching the player perspective over the first few games with him, because he got some snaps a season ago. A season ago, he was just there. He was physically there. In terms of impact, it was not a minus, but it was nothing sort of from a positive impact standpoint. He's actually he's made some plays and looks quicker. Looks like he's definitively gained some quickness over the last year.
Good effort from Walthour. Next up.
It's my boy Bear. He gets stuffed as he's the outside guy, but he's the right defensive tackle. And over top of the left guard, his quickness, just watching him in the first step and how quickly he moves. I mean, he gets a pressure in the game and just destroys the right guard, I think, or later in the game. The ball gets thrown away before he gets there. But I think when you watch, and we talked about this with the draft stuff, we talked about the get off. How fast are you off the ball versus the rest of the defensive line? Bear's got some get off. And once he gets going, quick feet, moves. Yes, he's the contain rusher there. But I've been very impressed with Mr. Alexander in the first two games.
And let's remember,
a little bit of snaps he got, really this game, because he didn't play in the first game.
Let's remember he missed time in the spring due to injury, so he's coming back and doing well in his opportunities. He's not going to be in the first play in there or anything against SEC teams, at least not yet. Maybe by the end of the season, you never know.
Sooner rather than later. I can't not watch that guy and think you're going to see more of him.
Moving
Mr. Everett. Mr. Everett, if you're gonna play, you got to be able to tackle, right? If you're gonna play corner. And what's amazing about this, you've got Everett, true freshman, Starks, true freshman, Humphrey at the bottom of the screen, true freshman. At one point, I remember, there was had nine or 10 of the 11 guys on the field were true freshmen. These guys are getting a lot of time.
Cruton. Tell you what, Chaz Chambliss had a little bit of, I want to say, a rough game, but he had a couple moments where he got squeezed here. I do think it's unique when he's an edge rusher, and look at where Georgia ends up having to line him up because of the formation here. Got to be versatile if you play defensive line at Georgia. Very much so. And got to be physical if you're going to play on the outside, and anything. You got to be physical anywhere. He did strike. He attacked. I think that's Christian Miller actually has gotten some run as well. They're 52. And looked, I think, solid in the time that he's been there in these first couple games. But what's amazing when you talk about being physical and the little sack from Williams. Hey, they finally got a sack. This is it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I know people have complained about that. No sacks. Why do we have no sacks? Well, it's because of what you're doing the first few games and who you're playing against and how quickly the ball's coming out and screens and things like that. Again, Bear's got some get off. I like watching that guy play.
there's Bear. There's Mykel. You'll see how they work together. You had a point about being physical. I was just going to kind of – this play is just all being physical at the line of scrimmage, and these are two true freshmen doing that.
Yeah, and there's a coach who's a great writer for The Athletic, used to be with PFF. His name's Deontay Lee, and we text and talk back and forth because he's a defensive guy, and I've learned a lot from him. But one of the things that I've told him, and just in all the time that I've been able to see Georgia practice and play and think, like, this being physical is demanded. It's one of those things, like, coaches talk about hustle and all these intangible things that we're going to do regardless of anything else. Being physical is demanded. If you aren't physical, you don't play, period. End of story. And that's a culture. That's a top down. That's everything about what they do. It's just demanded. And if you don't do it, it's because it's always a question from a defensive coaching perspective. How can I get my guys to play that physical? Because you hear all the NFL scouts talk about how physical Georgia's defense is and how fast they fly the football, all these things. It's because it's demanded every single day, every time they step on the field. And if you don't do it, you just don't play. And to be able to take all those high-level recruits and big-time guys and get that out of them is phenomenal. And that's top-down head coach. I shouldn't say head ball coach. That's a bad reference.
And your two guys, Bear and Mykel, meet in the middle here, both on the path to the QB. It was a great game.
I do think you're going to see more and more of Bear, especially in pass rush situations.
There's a prediction from Brent Rollins. So that's a look at the young guys. Again, games like Samford, games like Kent State, we're going to try to show you some things that maybe you didn't notice or you didn't see or things like that.
Because that was like the varsity playing the 9th grade team.
And Samford's a good FCS team. They ain't Georgia. And they're well coached. I was actually very impressed with just their fundamentals, their tackling. They didn't make things easy for Georgia. And I think that's why Kirby Smart was frustrated, is because Georgia should be able to figure things out a little more easily than they did against the Samford. Hey, that's our look at Georgia's young defensive line. For Brent Rollins, I'm Dayne Young. This is Film Don't Lie. If you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel or just walk over to your neighbor's house and tell them to do it, because it makes us very happy. And then we can do more content just like this for you. If you're on Facebook, like that page. Follow us on Twitter. You can just Google our names and find out how to do all those things. That's probably the easiest way, because we have so many different channels that we're putting Film Don't Lie on. Thanks.